Hi, I'm Matt Donnelly. This is Viper Bites, and these are my guys at the running back position for 2023. What more does Aaron Jones have to do to earn your respect? We are talking about a running back who has posted four consecutive top 12 fantasy seasons at the running back position. However, his current ADP is RB16 heading into 2023. Further to all of that, Jones has seen at least 20% or more of his opportunities coming from targets in each of the last four seasons, seeing at least 45 targets in each. Yet he seems to still be available in the fifth round of most fantasy drafts. Some may think that Father Time, who happens to be undefeated, by the way, could be coming for Jones sooner rather than later, but the Packers' back is coming off a season in which he averaged 5.5 yards per carry, with 2.2 yards coming after contact. Only three running backs have finished top 10 in missed tackles forced in each of the last two seasons. That's Aaron Jones, Nick Chubb, and Ramondre Stevenson. If you're worried about A.J. Dillon, don't. He's not going to dip into Jones's fantasy production. Jones was easily the more productive of the two backs, besting Dillon in missed tackles per attempt, yards after contact, and explosive run rate, which are all categories that I look very closely at when I rank my running backs. With a young quarterback taking over under center for the first time in Jordan Love, you can expect this offense to lean heavily on Jones, especially early on in the season. I wouldn't be surprised if we see plenty of screen passes out of this offense. Last season, Jones produced 209 yards receiving in the screen game. And it wouldn't surprise me if Jones messed around and somehow became the second most productive receiver when it comes to receptions on this Packers team when the season finally comes to a conclusion. I would even go as far as saying that this offense, it took a step back under Aaron Rodgers under center. You can't tell me that Matt LaFleur was able to run his offense under the Aaron Rodgers regime. Green Bay was 17th in yards from scrimmage, 14th in total points, yet somehow, someway, Aaron Jones, he finished inside the top 10 for fantasy. Now, another one of my guys, Miles Sanders, he may have had a good thing going on in Philadelphia, but he signed with the Carolina Panthers. This offense may be seen as a downgrade when you compare the offensive lines. He's going from one of the best offensive lines in Philadelphia from last season to an offensive line that basically ranks in the middle of the pack. Then again, let's give Sanders his due. Let's give him a little bit of credit. While the line, it definitely helped him crank out plenty of yardage last season, the dude was still able to make other dudes miss. Sanders' 66 missed tackles forced was second only to Nick Chubb. That works out to about 0.29 missed tackles forced per attempt. Now, while Sanders, he's never going to be mistaken for Christian McCaffrey. When the Eagles did need him back in his rookie season to catch passes, he was more than capable of doing so. In that rookie season, Sanders would haul in 50 of 63 targets for 509 yards. Philadelphia, for whatever reason, did not use him as a threat out of the backfield after that rookie season. In fact, last season, Sanders was RB63 in targets per game and RB98 when it came to receiving yards. Now, reports out of Panthers HQ are that we can expect Sanders to be a true three-down back this season and play a significant part in the passing game. There also happens to be just over 80 targets available for backs in this Panthers offense. If you add an increase in targets to Sanders' ability to run the ball, especially coming off a 1,200-yard rushing season, it's easy to see that Sanders has everything needed to outperform his current ADP of RB20. After all, he was the RB13 with no pass-catching role just a season ago. And let's not forget that Sanders, he did have 11 rushing touchdowns last season, as well as the sixth most goal-to-go touches while losing opportunities to Jalen Hurts. With a rookie quarterback with a lack of elite weapons on the outside, Miles Sanders will once again be able to prove that he is a complete back and push towards RB1 status when it comes to fantasy. Like the value currently associated with Miles Sanders and Aaron Jones, you have to love where you are currently able to land Rashad Penny in fantasy drafts. It's not often that you can land a running back with RB1 upside and you select him as the 40th running back coming off the board, especially with the risk already baked into his current ADP. So you don't have to worry about that negatively affecting him. Rashad Penny, he isn't going to be that pass catching back in this Eagles offense. According to training camp reports, DeAndre Swift has been lining up everywhere and looks to be the primary pass catching back out of a backfield that historically hasn't checked down the ball to their running backs. Just ask Miles Sanders. A healthy Rashad Penny is twice the back as Swift is in this Eagles offense. We saw what Miles Sanders was able to do in this offense behind one of the best offensive lines in the NFL last season. In fact, Sanders was fifth in the league with 1,269 rushing yards, despite finishing dead last among qualifying running backs in percentage of rushing yards gained after first contact in each of the last two seasons. Penny, for contrast, was first in that category, playing in behind a poor offensive line there in Seattle. A closer look at Sanders' production last season shows that 39.8% of his carries had contact at or before the line of scrimmage. When healthy, Penny has averaged 5.7 yards per carry throughout his career. And in 2022, his explosive run rate of 10.5%, that was the second best mark amongst running backs with at least 50 carries, while leading all backs in yards after contact per carry at 4.37. This was all behind that horrible offensive line in Seattle. What do you think is going to happen when you put a line that doesn't allow a back to get contacted before the line of scrimmage with a back that is averaging 9.5 yards per carry on runs with no contact in the backfield? You know what? We are going to find out, and it is going to be a thing of beauty. Since 2021, only 7 other running backs have finished with a higher percentage of top 5 finishes than Penny has when active in half-point PPR formats. With the constant threat of Jalen Hurts pulling the ball down and running and the weapons that the Eagles have on the outside, those lanes will be opening up all season long. And Penny, he doesn't need a big opening to produce. So, hey, he doesn't even need many carries to be effective. We've seen what he's been able to do with very few touches. Now, a public service announcement is important to note from the start that David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs, they can coexist in this Detroit Lions offense. Montgomery is going to be playing behind a much better line in Detroit than he had in Chicago. In fact, Detroit's line averaged 1.81 yards before contact just a season ago. And since 2019, David Montgomery is the RB19 in fantasy, and now he happens to be coming off the board as the RB23. So the value is already there. Now, most people, I get it, are going to point out that Jahmyr Gibbs was hand-selected by Detroit brass for a very specific role in Detroit. And I would argue so too was David Montgomery. Detroit signed the former Bears back to a 3-year, $18 million deal in the offseason. And if reports are true, the Lions, they had their eyes already set on Jahmyr Gibbs with their first of the 2 first-round selections, and they happened to be able to move back. So we know they had a very specific plan for both these backs to be used in 2023. Between DeAndre Swift, Jamal Williams, and let's throw Justin Jackson in there too, the Lions backs combined for 403 carries and 93 targets. That is a lot of opportunities for David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs to split. When looking at these offensive lines, I mentioned a little bit earlier, Montgomery got that upgrade in that department because that Bears offensive line, it generated just 1.32 yards before contact, while I mentioned this Lions team was 1.81 yards before contact, which is great news for a running back who is averaging 4 yards per carry. Now, it would not surprise me if we saw Jahmyr Gibbs catch 70, maybe even 80 passes in this Lions offense, which was a top 5 offense a season ago. It also wouldn't surprise me to see David Montgomery get a similar role to that of Jamal Williams there, who had 22 touches there on the goal line and 57 red zone opportunities while playing just 45% of the snaps. Now, looking at how this Lions backfield dynamic a season ago kind of played out in 14 games in which Swift and Williams were both available, Williams would average 15.9 touches per game. That is a very, very realistic number that I think we can expect from David Montgomery moving forward. Per my friends over at Fantasy Points Data, Montgomery's 0.31 forced missed tackle rate was tied for the highest amongst backs with at least 125 carries. And finally, my last running back that you have to have, one of my guys, that was James Conner. Last season, Conner averaged 4.3 yards per carry, churning out 782 rushing yards on just 183 attempts. He also caught 46 passes, which was the second most of his career. Volume is key. There is no competition in this Cardinals backfield unless Keontae Ingram is one of those guys that worries you, which he probably shouldn't. Since coming to the desert, Conner has accounted for 55% of all running back touches. There were 400 touches available last season, and new offensive coordinator there, Drew Pitzing, is coming from a Cleveland offense where they had 502 touches in 2021. Now, it looks like Kyler Murray is going to miss some time early on this season, which is great news for James Conner and James Conner managers, because less Murray means more Conner. When Murray missed time, Conner would go on to average 22.5 fantasy points per game. Right now, Connor is being drafted as the RB26 after producing RB4 numbers over the final 8 games of the season. When looking at top 5 finishes in half-point PPR there since 2021, when healthy, Connor had the 7th highest percentage of said finishes. Last season, he ranked top 20 in routes run per game. That was 3rd best. Missed tackles per reception, 12th, and yards after contact per attempt, 17th. Let's look at these numbers a little bit more. Let's back it up. More routes per game run than Christian McCaffrey, Saquon Barkley, or even Ramondre Stevenson. Why aren't more people talking about this? You know what? Shh. We'll keep this our little secret. Now, Connor, he is sitting right there in plain sight, and everybody is just going about their fantasy drafts like he doesn't even exist. Connor is currently being drafted after Cam Akers, Alexander Mattison, DeAndre Swift, Rachaad White, and even Dalvin Cook. There's literally no back that can provide the type of value that Connor does this season. Now, another little nugget for you, Connor was RB9 in snap rate inside the 20, and since 2018, only Derrick Henry has converted at a higher rate of goal line carries than Connor's 52.5% amongst running backs, and that is per fantasy points. We are talking about a running back coming off a 72% opportunity share last season, who also finished top 15 in evaded tackles with 64 and yards per touch created that you're getting in the 6th round. It wouldn't surprise me if Connor ended up as a top 12 fantasy option at the running back position this season. Volume is going to be there. We've seen that increase in that involvement in the passing game, and he's one of the most efficient backs in the NFL. Historically speaking, his floor is as a top 20 running back at worst, thanks to that volume that he's going to see in Arizona. And I would be shocked, absolutely shocked, if he had less than 300 touches for this Arizona Cardinals team. Now, with that all being said, make sure to hit that like button and make sure you are subscribed to the Vipers Network for more fantasy football content coming the next few weeks.